Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We have a very special guest with us today, founder and CEO of Ice Barrel, Wyatt Ewing. Hello.
Hey.
I like the logo.
Here.
It's just Ice Barrel. No pretense.
Simple, right?
Yeah, it's just, I like it. It's, people are getting too weird with the logos these days. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
So tell me about tell me your background a little bit, and then we'll get into how the company came about, and then I want to talk about some of the science behind what makes this kind of an effective, tool in your toolkit. So
Sure.
first lead off, tell me about yourself, where you come from, and how you got into the business.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Colorado Springs. Had kind of an unusual upbringing, very independent, very entrepreneurial. Worked my butt off throughout high school. Had very high dreams and aspirations. My granddad was a U.S. astronaut, Colonel Jim Irwin. He was one of the men on the moon, and so I always aspired to do something like great in life. But due to a lot of unfortunate family circumstances growing up, it was very challenging. Very survival based. So I grew up just, even though I was a go-getter and things kind of looked good on the outside, just struggled horribly with like anxiety. But got an early jump on life. Met my wife right out of high school. She was gorgeous and intelligent, couldn't pass up on that opportunity. So got married young, bought a house, and just really started like taking life by the horn, the bull by the horns, and going for it. And I found myself in different like luxury sales type jobs, high commissions, not moving a lot of volume, but art, sculptures, jewelry, high-end home remodels, things like that. And that kind of led me to the place of selling corporate jets. I would help companies all over the US buy and sell their corporate jets, which that's like, I don't know how much you know about that industry, but it's like the Wild West. There's nobody that monitors or oversees or regulates aviation transactions because it's all cross border, right?
Yeah.
So you're dealing with some like very unique individuals. And I needed something for my anxiety from like childhood, plus the high stress job. I had a very young family at the time and needed to do something different. That's when I found cold therapy. I was burning the candle at both ends. This guy noticed me and he was like, dude, you look stressed. You should take an ice bath or a cold shower. So I started in the cold showers and changed my life. That's like the 30-second version.
Yeah. I mean, that was 90 seconds, but whatever, dude. You're not a math guy. Yeah, that's a really interesting story. And I can definitely confirm that the corporate jet sale, I have a buddy that does that in Atlanta, and it's just like, she'll tell me sometimes some of the stuff that she's been up to and how it went. I'm like, how is any of this? Like, it seems like it's an industry that on the periphery would appear to have quite a bit of regulation that just has none at all, right? Like you don't need, it's like, if you buy a car, if you go into a dealership and buy a car, you got to show them that you got a license and car insurance and all that shit, right? If you buy a corporate jet, it's just like, you got money?
Yeah,
Here,
exactly.
Let's do this.
As long as the wire goes through, anything goes.
Which, whatever. So tell me about the, work-life balance gets you into a position where, you're maybe your anxiety's getting out of control, or maybe you're just not feeling like you're performing at your best. A lot of people like breathwork and meditation have gotten pretty, I would say that meditation and mindfulness probably came first here in the States, became popular with a lot of people who are into that sort of thing. And then I think that breathwork and cold plunges kind of came right on the heels of that. And it's interesting to me because, mindfulness has always been part of religion, right? So there's some pretty big studies that came out in the early 2000s that showed things like whether it's meditation or yoga or prayer or just there's a variety of different ways to go about it, but they all have the same general effect, right? Which is to say, it's the process by which your brain comes to terms with its reality, I guess. You know what I mean? And then then one of the things that has been kind of a staple of mental health and recovery over the years, I think is a mistake, which is experiential avoidance, right? It's like, well, I have a problem with drugs and alcohol, so I'm going to go to AA and never go near any of those things again. Or I have a problem with this relationship that I'm having, so I'm just going to ignore it and move on with my life. Bad news doesn't get better with time, first. And second, experiential avoidance doesn't work because you don't actually fix what's wrong, right? You're just avoiding it. But these are steps that you can take that you can do in your own home. You don't need, it's not cost prohibitive. Some of it's actually free. And I wonder why it took so long for the general public to kind of catch on to some of this shit, especially the cold plunge thing, because athletes have been doing this for fucking 100 years. You know what I mean? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think like cold therapy is not new. It gets practiced in Europe and Asia frequently. But here in the West, we have an avoidance to anything uncomfortable. We're trying to optimize our lives to be more comfortable, to be less hard, right? And we start rejecting the things that make us feel more human and more alive. I mean, just simple things like get cold, go barefoot, drink water, and get adequate sleep. You do those things, like your life's going to drastically improve. And those are all like primitive things that we used to do as part of our daily life. But just as modern society has gone on, we just have rejected them. And we've accepted this form of technology as a way to optimize. And all it does is diminish our instincts. Right? Technology should only inform our instincts, not replace them.
And amplify, right? You know what I mean? Like not supplement, but like compliment with an E, not to give them a compliment, but to legit.
Yeah.
I 100%, right? That's and we talk about this all the time with everybody's afraid of AI. It's like it's another tool that we can use to amplify what's good about what we're doing here. Not everything is intrinsically good or bad. And the assessment that as we've become more technologically advanced, we've become more like it's been guided towards comfortability, right? Which, whatever. A lot of people die from being cold, so we should figure out ways to heat our homes. Great, right? But we should also remember that, well, think about it this way. Hot and warm water indoors is a relatively new thing for humanity. You know what I mean?
100%.
100 years ago, good chance that the vast majority of people were taking cold showers because they had to. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yes. Yeah, very much so. And even like if you did have heating in your home, it was not like adequate or efficient, right? Wood burning stoves heat disproportionately.
Right.
Right. So yeah, we were way more exposed to the climate and our immune systems were a lot stronger than they are today.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, you mentioned that Asia and Europe have been using this stuff for a long time. And even like in the West, athletes have for as long as I can remember, since the middle part of the 20th century. Icing your muscles, for example, was really common back then, still is. But a full submerged ice bath for, I don't know about the NBA necessarily, but I know for hockey, baseball, and football, that's a routine thing. They have every one of them, every NFL, Major League Baseball, and hockey locker room I've ever been in, they have some kind of ice bath of some sort, right? Even if it's just a big metal tub that you throw ice into.
Totally.
And it's, I think the general public believed that this was just about muscle repair, right?
Correct. Yes.
But that's just the tip of the iceberg, no pun intended, but that's just the tip, right?
Oh, 100%. I remember when I first started Ice Barrel, like back in like 2000, early 2018, I was dragging this ice bath around all the cities in South Denver, or all the gyms, in South Denver, trying to convince people to take an ice bath. And they're like, that's for NFL players. Like I was the weird dude, right? Trying to get people to take ice baths. But yeah, and I think, the short-term benefits of cold therapy is a reduction of pain, reduction of inflammation, releases beta endorphins in the body, gives you that euphoric feeling, which is amazing. But the long-term benefits of cold therapy are incredible for mental resilience, emotional well-being, staving off cognitive decline over time, reducing symptoms of anxiety, depression. The list goes on and on. It's pretty incredible. Some of the stuff is obvious. Mental resilience, obviously, doing hard things is always going to be good for you, right? No matter
that's always going to be part of any kind of, you really want to marry your the outcome of things that you want with some kind of discomfort. I think it's a good idea, right?
Yeah,
Because it's kind of an iron law of life that doing hard shit improves your life, right? Whether it's learning a new
correct.
skill or working out or whatever it is, or even if you think about one of the ways that I like to approach it, excuse me, is I look at something like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like I need shelter, I need food, et cetera, and try to fund like it. These days, it's become more common to have a 9 to 5 that's relatively physically comfortable, right? I mean, there's a lot of people still doing hard blue collar work, but relative to the past, more or less physically comfortable, and that is the process by which I go through to I guess earn or develop my diet and my shelter, which is good, right? I mean, you're achieving the goal, but I think some of the stuff that in the middle gets lost, right? Like building your own home, having the skills to do that, or having to do your own maintenance on it, right? Or having to hunt and kill your food or whatever it is, right? Collect it even. And I think there's something that we lose, right? When we kind of push that out of our daily lives.
Yeah, I mean, we're I think it's interesting. I talk about like you kind of get into the concept of like then like what is money, because there are certain people that are way more talented and have different skill sets. Um, but you can find discomfort in anything that uh is respectable and worth doing. There's some form of discomfort there. So like I think a good example is like I'm always of the mindset like my skill set, like I'm probably not the best guy to like fix the dishwasher when it breaks down. Now it's a good idea for me to have like
Mm-hmm.
basic knowledge of like handyman repair stuff, but at the
Sure.
same time, like if I go do what I'm doing and pay the handyman, like I'm supporting his work.
Mm-hmm.
Right now he can go support his family and on
Correct.
and on. But I think like the value then is like I have to go find like the hard respectable thing to do in my field and in my world, to add value to others for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we've lost that to a degree for sure. Like people are avoiding the hard things, and trying to optimize their life for comfort and um, for it to be easier. Nothing worth doing is easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the way I always summarize it is when you have the option, take the stairs, right? And it's
100%.
not
Yeah.
just about physically moving your body around, obviously, but when you in whatever situation you find yourself in life, if you have the option, do the one that's a little bit more difficult, or do the one that requires you to put more effort into it, because and don't try to make it don't try to moralize or nobilize it or anything. It's not like, oh, it's making me a better person. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know, but and it's like, oh, it's the right thing to do. Maybe the point is that it's mentally and physiologically effective to do that, right?
Yeah.
It may
100%.
not make you a better person. I don't like to talk in terms of that, but it'll make you a more resilient person.
Yes, absolutely. Also, I think it's important to control our how we release dopamine, right? And
Mm.
if we're releasing dopamine based on effort versus pleasure, we're going to be happier people at the end of the day and more sustained humans,
Sure, yeah.
well-adjusted humans.
When we do that, it's like you remove that effort part, and then what you lose, and I talk about this all the time, you lose that intrinsic connection in your mind between effort and outcome, right? And
Totally.
it's a problem, and that's a good way to put it. Control how we release dopamine, because your body will look for it in other ways that aren't so healthy if you aren't doing it in a way that's, I guess, productive, right? I mean, your
Yeah.
brain and body just crave that shit, so you're gonna
Yeah.
find something.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to be cognizant of it too. Like there are certain environments that I will not put myself in because my ego comes into play and then the dopamine hits become crazy and then I start like craving those environments. Like I
Mm.
just won't do it. I don't like I was just having this conversation with my 7-year-old. I was trying to explain to her that you never want to be the best person in the room at anything. You don't want to be the smartest, the strongest, the fastest, the
Mm.
coolest. Like that's an area that I try not to go into rooms where I shine. Like your ego comes into play, your dopamine starts going crazy. Like always try to be around people that are much better, more talented than you. you'll aspire to be more that way.
Yeah, I mean that's just another example of taking the stairs, right? Like
Yeah,
it's easy.
totally.
It's easy to be a fucking big fish in a small pond. Go out there
Totally.
and
Yeah.
expand. And it isn't just about challenging yourself like that. This is how one of my quotes that I like to use is when we all do better, we all do better. You know what I mean? When we all do better, as in we're doing well together, or when we do things that are better, when we perform at a higher level, the society does better, right? Like you owe it
Totally.
to all this infrastructure that makes these comfortabilities possible. You owe it to that, and that is to include like actual technology, but also the sacrifice of people who make this shit possible. All of those things you owe it to yourself, even, but especially your family and the other people that you live around and in this country and in the world, to perform at an optimal level like that. Now, you shouldn't be pathological about it. You shouldn't beat yourself up because you fail, and you shouldn't necessarily, you know, you don't want to get crazy about stuff. You don't want to be like, oh, I'm failing the world because my invention didn't work the way I thought it would. But you definitely want to be cognizant of that shit, and because we define ourselves by our purpose. And it feels better to accomplish things than it does to be handed things. I don't think anybody can question that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, 100%. I would say though, like to do something significant and meaningful in the world, you do need to be a little bit crazy or unbalanced.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like there's a level of like there's a narrative out there of just like stay in your lane, you know, uh go do what everybody else is doing. I think though, like in your effort to be meaningful in this world, you have to have a little bit of crazy, a little bit of
Sure, yeah.
unbalancedness.
I mean, that anxiety, like again, there's nothing intrinsically bad about any of these things. Anxiety is just your brain telling you that you need to be doing more, right? I mean, we don't have the natural predator, right? The mountain lion chasing us,
yes,
or
100%.
the weather. We pretty much, for the most part, I know there's events from time to time, but for the most part, the general public is safe from existential threats these days. So
Yeah,
to replace,
totally.
like back in the day, we would have dealt with this by working together to protect ourselves from these existential threats. But now we still have that same anxiety, but no threats. And I think it's difficult for people to find ways to quell it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, a big piece of it is obviously perspective. I think what was fueling a lot of my anxiety is I was like growing up, it was so survival based, that coming out of that environment, like even though I was like making good money and I had a home and everything was stable, I still operated in this sense that any moment it's going to be taken away. Right. And I think is that like lower natured self thinking that like some other tribe is going to come, steal from you. And right. But I think at the end of the day, a lot of it was perspective. And I was like buying into this hustle culture, that like it's obnoxious when I look back on it now, but
people that say grind too much.
Yeah. I refuse to say that word, but yeah, the people that are constantly hustling and grinding and they're like climbing this never ending ladder of success because it's trendy on social media. I wasn't on social media, but I was definitely buying into like enough is never enough. I heard this quote somewhere. It was something like the happiest person on earth is the person that has enough. And it's like, well, what is enough? Like we all have more than enough. So a lot of it is like just perspective. But I think it's also kind of become trendy and quirky to have some kind of like anxiety or depression, and it's not. You know what I mean? No. Like they're kind of buzzwords, but at the same time, it's like they should be dealt with. You don't want to sit in them. You don't want to, you know what I mean? If you're experiencing some form of like anxiety, do something about it. Don't just like sit in there and like make it popular.
Yeah, isn't that weird how like all of these things, like pain, for example, is just your body telling you there's a problem, so deal with the problem. Anxiety is your brain telling you I need to do more, or maybe there's some kind of threat that my 90% of communication is nonverbal. Your brain is creating patterns all the time, or identifying patterns all the time, and it is way better at being a brain than you are at thinking, right? So paying attention to that stuff is a good idea. It really is. But the point of it is to elicit some kind of action on your part and not to just become part of your identity to earn sympathy from people. It's
Correct.
very weird that we've made this turn, to be honest, in modern culture. I don't even like, regardless of how comfortable we've all gotten, that is very bizarre to me. I'm not sure exactly how that happened.
Yes, it's pretty odd. I think it's interesting because when you look at I forget the name of it, but it's like where they classify the different types of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's new stuff getting added in there every day, and these certain like diagnoses, like neurosis and anxiety are two different things, but they're now just clumped together as anxiety. So it's like we're almost like umbrellaing a society that has different challenges and different like issues all under this umbrella of anxiety. I think it's very disconcerting, actually. Like soon everybody's going to be, oh, I have anxiety, right? It's just going to become like what you say to explain your human experience.
Well, you know what it kind of sounds like to me is astrology, frankly. It's like, oh, I'm sorry I'm being a bitch. I'm a Scorpio. It's like, no, you're just being a bitch, dude. Like you were still in control of your actions. I think that's part of it too, to kind of eschew personal responsibility to some degree. You know what I mean? It's like if there's an excuse for me to quit or to do less than what I should have, or to make a bad decision, however you want to describe that, then you're kind of letting yourself off the hook. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't really get into these moto phrases too much because it's like, calm down, dude. We're all just fucking living life here. But
we're all just trying to make it through this.
Yeah. But you can't like go into it. If you go into a situation, whether it's a workout or a work project, like a long run, or, in the military, we dealt with this a lot. If you go into the thing, whatever it happens to be, with a prepared excuse already, you're gonna fucking quit. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like you've got to work the quit out of your mind. It's just not acceptable to be there. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Let's talk about some of the physiological effects of cold plunging. Can you give me like just a general idea of some of the science behind that, and then I'm going to have some specific questions?
Yes, for sure. So there's a lot of voices out there right now that are researching and talking about like the science of cold therapy. Like what you're doing is you're putting your body in this fight or flight response, and then you're controlling the physiological effects by the initial response is, I'm in an unsafe environment, I need to get out, right? But you're going to breathe through that. You're going to reset the fight or flight response in the body. You're not getting chased by a bear or a lion, right? You're okay. You can breathe through this. And as you get past this like initial fight or flight response, your body eases into the cold water and you start activating the nervous system, and it starts increasing the brown adipose fat, which is like the good fat that helps burn energy and helps support weight loss. You're going to boost your metabolism. And then you're also stimulating the vagus nerve, which is really cool because it's one of the few ways that you can quickly stimulate the vagus nerve. There's a branch of nerves that goes down. It's right at the base of your neck here. So you submerge all the way down to your shoulders, and that's connected to a majority of the organs in the body. So it's this whole body nervous system effect. It's like a workout for your nervous system. And I mean, on top of that, like all the great beta endorphins that are getting released in the body. We did this really cool study where we had our blood drawn before we took an ice bath. And we had like, I don't know, it was close to like 40 different markers. And then we took an ice bath. It was 3 minutes, all the same temperature for everybody. And like my norepinephrine and epinephrine levels went from 400 to 1300. Like it was insane.
I'm sorry, so it tripled.
Yeah. And it was sustained itself for like, we then drew blood again 30 minutes after the ice bath. And those have a long tail decline. So like your dopamine, your feel good hormones that get released in the body, like that's insane. That's like those levels are like close to consuming a narcotic, you know, like those are real numbers, very high levels of epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, all that. So like, I mean, that's just great. That's going to just melt away the cortisol levels in the body, right? Which are connected to stress.
Sorry, I'm taking some notes here.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. Also like, I mean, the improvement of sleep is huge, right? Your body works all throughout the night to cool itself down. So you take an ice bath in the evening, like you give your body a head start, you're going to sleep much better.
I wonder what it like how that does compare numbers wise to narcotics. That would be an interesting thing to study because, you know, I know some pretty effective ways of breaking addiction. I mean, Ibogaine is pretty much the most effective way of breaking addiction, but it is fucking brutal. You know what I mean? it's. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's like the most potent psychotropic drug on earth, and it's rough. You know what I mean? But it will. I've seen people.
What does it do?
I've seen people that have had years long narcotic addictions pretty much go cold turkey after that with no side effects. You know what I mean? So it's not like you're taking some lesser form of a drug that you're just going to get hooked on again, or going cold turkey and sweating your ass off and wanting to kill yourself. You know what I mean? It is very powerful. I'll say that. I'm not sure exactly what the physiological effects are happening, but I know that it kind of cleans out your opioid receptors, right, in your brain. So that's part of it. But it does. There's so many other things that it does as well. So I would be very curious to see how just cold plunges, like one cold plunge, stacks up against one, day of using narcotics or one night of using narcotics versus regular cold plunges in narcotics. That would be a really interesting study, to be honest.
I was talking to this addiction specialist, and they said that they recommend people in AA to start cold therapy around step 4. One thing that's interesting that I also noticed for myself, when I started in cold therapy, I was at a very, very low point in life. And there was definitely a level of like suffering and agonizing that I was going through, that the enjoyment of the pain from the ice bath, like felt really good. Like I almost found myself like I continually going back because the sensation of the pain. And I would do really cold ice baths. Like I was taking them down in like the low 30s. And all through, like, Colorado winters are freezing cold. I'm like busting ice up. It's literally, the water's literally 33 degrees. And I'm sitting in these ice baths for like anywhere between 8 and 12 minutes. And I'm enjoying it. Whereas now, like as I've totally healed from this like state of distress that I was in to where I am today, like they're uncomfortable. Like I like them and I enjoy an ice bath, but that level of uncomfortable and the pain that I experience, like I'm not as into that level of pain like I used to be, which is interesting. Now I can still like ease into it and all that, but I'm not doing it for like this sensational feeling like I used to. And I think that's interesting because we hear a lot of stuff back from our customers, and it seems like people come to cold therapy when they're in some form of suffering, whether it's emotional, physical, right? They need better recovery. They're in some, and they're swapping their pains, right? So they're picking a new type of hard, right, I guess you could say. But it's interesting. So when I was talking to this lady that was in addiction recovery, she was saying that if you introduce cold therapy to certain folks in recovery too soon, it almost becomes like they start craving the ice bath in a different way, and it can cause further relapse, which is interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
I don't know. Everyone's so different.
You mentioned the vagus nerve. When you, this is just a mechanical question, but when you're doing a cold plunge, you need to go to at least your shoulders, is what you're saying, to activate that part?
Yeah, I theoretically and ideally, yes. You'll hear some different opinions out there. Some people say you just have to splash your face. Other people say you just have to smudge right to the sternum. But we know locationally that the vagus nerve is right here on the back of the neck.
Right.
That's why ancient Chinese medicine tells us to put an ice cube on the back of our neck, right at the base, if we have a headache, right? It's because you're trying to stimulate the vagus nerve. So if you can submerge down to the base of your neck, ideally that's going to be the most effective.
Yeah, I'm very curious about some of this stuff. Tell me why Like what's the temperature you're looking for? Somewhere in the low 40s probably, I would guess, but what do you think it is?
Really, I mean, what science is showing us is that you're getting 90% of the benefits under 60 degrees.
Oh, really?
Like you don't have to go that cold. And I think that's great because cold therapy should be and is accessible to everybody. And you don't have to be an extremist and get down into like the low 30s, high 30s, right? You can take an ice bath and get 90% of the benefits around 50 to 55 degrees. Now duration in there, you're probably going to need to stay in there a little bit longer, right? Maybe it's 2 minutes, 5 days a week, 3 minutes, 5 days a week. Generally, the lower temperature you go, the less time you need to be in there. But you do also build up cold habituation, which is this like tolerance to the cold. Like that's a real thing. And I've experienced that. So like, it's hard for me, like when I get down in like the high 30s, low 40s, like, I don't know what temperature it is. I just have this tolerance to it, regardless, you're still getting the benefits, even though it becomes simpler to do.
So, I mean, so the marker should be what, consistency then, or do you need to, if there's no plateau effect? I mean, I'm sure there is somewhere if you're getting into the 20s and shit, but should I look to decrease the temperature as time goes on as I become more comfortable, or is there? You said you get most of the effect just under 60 degrees. Is there a point of diminishing return where you're just suffering for no reason?
I mean, yeah, the lower you go, the lower temperature you go, absolutely. Like it's not necessary to get below 40 degrees.
Okay.
So I mean, high 40s, low 50s is like a sweet spot somewhere in there that you're comfortable with. Also, like depending on the climate you live in, your own physiology, your own body fat, right, is gonna, what might feel cold to you might not feel cold to somebody else. You know what I mean? So it totally depends on the climate you're in. People that live in Florida, like they're cold in 70-degree water. When you take somebody from the northern states, it like they can get down into like the 30s and 40s and feel comfortable.
Right.
So
Yeah.
a lot of factors to take into consideration.
Do you think why an ice bath instead of just a cold shower? Is there something different to being submersed than just having the cold water on you, or is there much of a difference?
Yeah. So when I went from the cold shower to the ice bath, I was looking for a place that I could stay in a meditative state without like the sensory overload
Right,
of the
okay.
water hitting the body. The other thing is you get the hydrostatic pressure of the water. I think this is super important. When you submerge yourself in 105 gallons of water or 80 gallons of water, that water has weight and volume to it. You're getting this hydrostatic pressure, this pressure on the body. It's like a giant ice pack. So the therapeutic benefits are way deeper in an ice bath than a cold shower. Although, like, I don't knock cold showers at all. I love cold showers. I still take them. I recommend cold showers for everybody. They're a great way to get started into the practice, and zero barrier of entry, right?
Yeah, you can
Doesn't
just walk
cost
into it.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned another one of the physiological effects of ice baths or cold therapy in general, and it is your fight or flight response, and that's the limbic system, right? I mean, you're essentially resetting your limbic system because we can get into this a little bit. You mentioned some level of insecurity in your upbringing, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to get
Totally.
you don't have to get into details if you don't want to, but it is the case that over time, particularly in our formative years, we associate certain things with threats that aren't necessarily the case, right? It isn't true that, like, some people associate opening up to other people and becoming close with people or taking a risk in their work life or whatever, right? It's almost like a pathological version of the natural physical stimulus our brain creates to make us go do things. And this is true with it's essentially a long-term form of post-traumatic stress, right? I mean, your brain, the way your brain filters data is fucked up. It's not correct. And this can help reset that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've gotten so accustomed to little things triggering the fight or flight response in us that shouldn't necessarily be there. So, somebody like yelling at you in traffic should not evoke the fight or flight response. You know what I mean? somebody like pulling a gun on you should,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's different things. Also, like some people, when they start talking about finances, they really go into this like lower state being. Their fight or flight response comes on this like mindset of scarcity. There's not enough
Mm-hmm.
money for everybody, right? Those types of things should not like trigger our flight or flight response. I think a lot of it is also we're so comfortable that any form of discomfort is like almost an assault to our brains. And so like we want to reset that. We want to go back to this like baseline healthy level of what should trigger the fight or flight response. Like we're going in and out of it all day long. But we want to stay in this rest and repair mode. Also, if you look at like the state of America and like the health rate, like when you're in the rest and repair mode, your body naturally starts burning fat, right? Like that's important, but we're like majority of Americans are just staying in this fight or flight response, right? And so their body's in this like preservation mode all the time, like not a great state to be in. So, yeah, cold therapy is a great way to reset that default setting in us. And I also think it promotes a presence of mind. And when you have a present, like your mind is present, you are where your feet are, right? You're not thinking about everything else because you're in this awful environment, right? You're cold and your mind is just with you and it's just present. Like your problem solving ability in that state is so much higher than when you're ruminating on the past or fearing the future. Like if you could just, it puts us in this place of presence that we have a hard time in the society getting to. You know, meditation is hard, right? Throwing yourself in an ice bath, you don't have a choice but to get present in the moment, you know?
Yeah, it's taking all your mental and physical energy just to exist, which is a good thing, right?
100% a good thing. Yeah. And then you can like, yeah, then you can deal with life so much better when you're present in the moment.
Yeah, not getting, I mean, look, we eat shitty diets in the West. There's 38% of Americans are in either diabetic or in pre-diabetes now. The numbers are truly staggering and fucked up.
That's insane.
And we just don't ever, that's a really good assessment. We never enter that. We never legit enter our rest and repair mode that typically has been the case for human beings over the course of our evolution. And you know, if you're even if you are sleeping 6 to 8 hours a night, you're not getting rest if you're not entering that repair mode. And some of there's plenty of effects to that. One, your limbic system is going to be fucked up. Your cortisol levels are going to be through the roof because they think you're under constant attack and you're not going to be able to lose weight around your midsection like you want to. You know what I mean? There's just so many downstream effects from that stuff. And, you know, I don't think it's been the case that we talked about this all that much. I don't think it's a new problem either. I think it's probably been a problem that began somewhere after the Industrial Revolution and has gotten worse and worse as we become more technologically advanced. And we just started talking about this maybe 2 decades ago, if that, right? And we're only in the last 5 years have we been talking about it in a serious way where we're actually coming up with some solutions like cold therapy and things like that. We were plenty comfortable just to prescribe SSRIs to everyone for years.
Right.
And now finally we're giving people a way to deal with this that doesn't have side effects or doesn't have a high barrier to entry. You know what I mean? It's something you can do yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And and should be doing. There's an interesting book out there that I recently read called What Technology Wants. And regardless of what you believe about like the origin of mankind, it talks about this life cycle of technology and the demand of technology on humanity and how we almost have this like symbiotic relationship. But they go through all these different civilizations of how like this is nothing that we're discussing is new. And other societies and civilizations have gotten to a place where the demands of technology are so high and the attention that it requires of us that we continue to like force out these basic necessities that we need in life to live well and to live meaningful. It's a super interesting book. I highly recommend it. But yeah, I think we can look at history and hopefully learn from it, not repeat it.
Well, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
What is it about? Well, one of the things I've read about cold therapy is forcing your body to produce more heat, right? To keep your core, you're trying to attack your core with cold, so it'll be forced to produce heat. What is it that does exactly? Aside from the like resilience and stuff, and just doing hard stuff, is there something physiological that's doing?
Yeah, that is literally helping flush your endocrine system, which is the like your lymph or the lymphatic system in the
Mm-hmm.
body, as well as improving circulation. You got to get blood flowing and blood moving to the right places, um, for sure.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I mean, let's unpack that a little bit. The number one killer of Americans is heart disease in any given year, right? Aside from external factors, heart disease is one of the worst, and you can definitely improve your cardiovascular, situation by doing stuff like this. It isn't
Yeah,
you don't have to go run
absolutely.
10 miles a day. It doesn't require all that stuff. Human beings have not spent the last 150 to 250,000 years running everywhere, right? We ran from time to time. We walked a lot, yeah, sure, but we didn't just sprint around to stay healthy all the time. It just wasn't true, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, back to that book, it talks about how like the even the movement of man, like we were more like grazers than sprinters the
Mm-hmm.
majority of history. Like we would move slowly through time and space and then only sprint and when it was absolutely necessary. So no, I agree with that. Interestingly, like uh we want to like oxygen deprivation is like a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when there's a lack of blood flow to a certain part of the body is where a lot of pain exists usually, right? When you look at arthritis, when you look at um, different autoimmune issues, a lot of it comes down to oxygen deprivation. And so if you can flood certain parts of the body there where there's pain and discomfort with blood, which is oxygen,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then you can bring a lot of healing to that site. So what's awesome about cold therapy, especially full body immersion, is you are like activating the cardiovascular system and you are starting to pump blood through
Like
vasodilation.
the entire
The
system,
entire
yeah.
body, yeah,
It's
the
not like
entire
you
system.
see people doing cupping and things like that, which is it looks like kind of a silly fad, but I mean the science makes sense for it, right? You're drawing
Yeah,
like oxygen rich blood into that area. That's how your body heals itself, right? So that definitely makes sense. And this is just a way to do it rapidly and for your entire body all at once. And then on a regular basis with a pretty low footprint as far as effort goes, right?
totally. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that's nice is you're covering like the entire body. So when you're doing anything like cupping or dry needling, which are awesome healing modalities, and I use them both, but a lot of times, like if I'm having pain in my elbow from CrossFit, it's coming from my grip.
Right.
So if I'm like cupping or icing my elbow, that's not where the
Mm,
problem is.
yeah.
It's up here. And so to be able to fully submerge the body, you're not wondering if you're like targeting the right part of the body.
And what was it? This is all really interesting. I think anybody that's listened to some of this stuff, this show or previous, you know, uh, uh, discussions on cold therapy, you can kind of get a good sense of what the physiological benefits are and also the psychological benefits. But what was it that made you decide to start the company?
So it was like super significant for me what I was experiencing. Like I went from a very stressed out, impatient state of being. I did not like my attitude, my behavior. I was very, very impatient with myself and others, and constantly trying to like keep the ball rolling in my life, and terrified that I was gonna like it was all gonna get ripped out from under me. It very illogical.
Mm,
And the cold therapy helped me get to like a presence of mind and help me manage stress. And I noticed, like, and even my wife noticed, she's like, "You're way more patient than you used to
mm,
be." And it was meaningful. Like I was showing up as a better husband, as a better dad to my daughter. That I just became so passionate about cold therapy. I did the very unbalanced thing. I quit my job in corporate aviation and I was set off to create like the best cold therapy company in the world. And it was not easy and went completely broke along the way. Moved out of our beautiful home in Castle Rock, Colorado, out here to Amish country, Ohio, where we manufacture this product and have just lived a very like quiet, but yet meaningful life out here, sharing the power of cold. Whereas now, like, we're the official cold therapy sponsor of CrossFit. We gave thousands of ice baths out just at the CrossFit games, and we have changed tens of thousands of lives through our product, which is just so incredibly meaningful. So it's been crazy to see.
Yeah. So let's talk about tell me about the products you offer. You have two main barrels that you offer. Tell me about each one of those and what the difference is.
Yeah, so we have the Ice Barrel 400, which is like the OG traditional barrel. That's great. It's lightweight, compact. A lot of our customers live in apartment complexes, and so they don't have bathtubs and they have a small balcony. So they need something that they can put on their balcony to practice cold therapy. So the Ice Barrel 400 is great for that. It also can fit somebody that's like 6'8", 250 to 300 pounds. So you can put a large human in there. And it looks great. You stay in the upright position. Now, this was so important to me when I was making our products. Nowhere in nature do you see a creature go into the fight or flight response and then try and like lie on their back like you would in a bathtub. Like, that's a very rested recovery position. Like, we sleep on our backs, right? When we're in the fight or flight response, our chest is forward, we're engaged, right? And our spine is upright.
And our feet are under us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like think about it when you jump into a cold lake or a cold river. You don't float. Like, you know what I mean? Like when you go to Sarasota and you go out in the ocean, you just lie back in the water and float, right? So I wanted to create something that like honored the body's natural response in the fight or flight. So the Ice Barrel 400 was like designed around the ideal shape of the body. Then the Ice Barrel 300, that does great in our warmer climates. It's fully insulated, has a seat on the inside, and it has the quick connects already there for our upcoming water chiller, which we're going to be releasing soon. And also we created the Ice Barrel 300 specifically for our adaptive athletes, something that is easy to get in and out of, which we did a really good job. And we debuted that to the adaptive athlete division at the CrossFit Games, which was so cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Does the 400 also have the connector for the chiller, or is it just the 300?
There's an additional piece that will come with the chiller that you'll have to order it with the chiller to convert it. So you'll be able to use both of them in their existing states with the water chiller.
And what else do you guys offer? Are there other peripherals that you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, we have our ice block molds, which are amazing. They make a 7-pound block of ice, which is great. It keeps the water cold. Block ice melts way slower than crushed ice. Yeah. And so
less surface area.
Yeah, exactly. So that's an amazing product. We have the whole maintenance kit, cleaning kit, which keeps the water. I'm only changing my water every 4 to 6 weeks. So it lasts for a really long time when you do it properly. Those are the main products right now. We're getting ready, gearing up here to release our water chiller towards the end of the year, which is really exciting. It's been a long time coming on that. I've worked the last like 2.5 years, almost 3 years now on that product to create the first ever actual cold therapy water chiller, not some like aquarium chiller that's reshelled and white labeled for cold therapy.
Yeah, the only ones, the only barrels or baths that I see that have an integrated chiller are all the kind that you lie down in, right? I don't think I've seen one that's upright that has that functionality yet. So when did you say this is going to be available?
The water chiller will be available sometime towards the end of the year.
That's awesome. And what else do you guys, if anything, are you working on now? You know, is it, or are you just trying to get these products out? Or you got something else in the shoot?
Yeah, I mean, we're working on we have like an additional 5 products that we're releasing to the cold therapy community in our efforts to continually make it more accessible and more effective. We're really excited about our partnership with CrossFit, and just to be able to offer more recovery in these gyms to help limit CrossFit related injuries. CrossFit beats you up. But there's also a lot of other industries that we support. We love all of our UFC athletes. We have some interest in different like professional sports teams that we supply products to as well. So it's going to be exciting. We're also releasing a commercial version of the product later this year. So that we've put our whole heart and soul into that product. So very excited just to continue to make cold therapy more mainstream. People always say that cold therapy is trendy right now. I am the opposite. I do not think cold therapy is trendy yet, but I can't wait for the day that it becomes trendy so more people can experience the power of cold.
Yeah. I mean, it's been beneficial that Hooverman and a couple of other people, who know a lot about these things have gone into public and spoken about them. But I still get the sense that a lot of people either feel like it's a fad or that it's something that is maybe outside of their price range or something that, I just work 9 to 5. Why do I need something? I'm not a professional, like you said before. I'm not a professional athlete. Why do I need this stuff? Well, you're not a professional athlete. You also want to eat fucking good, high quality, nutrient dense food, right? You don't have to be a professional athlete to be able to justify using tech like this. This is just stuff. This is a supplement to modern life that makes it to make sure we're getting the benefits from things we used to do naturally back in the day that we've lost. I mean, it's really that simple.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's going to help you show up better for yourself and for the ones that you love so that you can focus on doing the things that you love most. So like when we're checking those boxes, like we're doing the right thing. I love the stories that we get from our customers, like, different firefighters and police officers, they get off their shifts and right before they even walk in their house, right in the garage, they have an ice bath. They just like strip down, take an ice bath, go inside. They're in a much better state of mind, right? Using that moment to break up what I just did at work. Now I'm going to go see my family, right? And now I'm in a more patient, receptive state of being for my family. Like that's meaningful. Your kids will thank you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you don't want to be a grumpy asshole all the time like me.
There you go.
My engineer's laughing off camera about that, so I guess it's true. All right, we got to get out of
bath
here.
In your studio.
Yeah, I know. I should put one in here or just splash my face with cold water at least. No, I'm actually gonna get one of these things and try it out, and I'm very curious about how it'll affect me. Because I'm already pretty like a lot of these things I've had to figure out on my own in ways that are probably quite a bit more difficult than just jumping in a fucking tub of ice. But we'll see if this will improve as well. We got to get out of here, but tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find your products on the internet, and then any other information that you'd like to share with people before we leave.
Yeah. I would first go check out our Instagram page. Like the team has done an amazing job at showing real people and real products. I feel like we're more than just like a brand on Instagram. Like we offer really cool experiences for the community and we show up in really generous ways on that platform. So go check us out at Ice Barrel on Instagram. And then our website is just icebarrel.com. If you're ready to take the next step in your journey to live a more meaningful life.
Sweet. Well, look, man, I appreciate you coming today. This has been very interesting, good information for people. I always like, products and services that are kind of centered around returning some autonomy back to people's lives, where they can, do something that they don't require anything else for, just to benefit themselves and their family. It's always a good thing.
100%. Hey, I appreciate you guys having me today. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime. And thank you all for listening. This has been Citizen.